Historian Arnold Toynbee's 12-volume magnum opus, A Study of History, was an exploration of the rise and fall of 28 different civilizations. Toynbee concluded that great civilizations don't get murdered, rather they kill themselves. All the signs of a civilization collapse are here. The Roman Empire, for example, was the victim of many ills, including overexpansion, climatic change, environmental degradation, and poor leadership. But it was also brought to its knees when Rome was sacked by the Visigoths in 410 and the Vandals in 455. Collapse is often quick, and greatness provides no immunity. The Roman Empire covered 4.4 million square kilometres, about 1.9 million square miles, in 390. 5 years later, it had plummeted to 2 million square kilometres, about 770,000 square miles. By 476, the empire's reach was zero. Collapse can be defined as a rapid and enduring loss of population, identity, and socio-economic complexity. Public services crumble and disorder ensues as the government loses control of its monopoly on violence. People realize they are slaves and no longer wish to be subjugated and punished at the whims of the ruling class or government, but seek their own liberty and self-ownership. As people begin to realize that the political class, the ruling class, is exceptionally wealthy as they slave away and half their wages are stolen to prop up those who exert power over them, societies tend to collapse. Government stays fat and happy when the slaves don't realize they're enslaved. America is committing suicide. Over the past 12 months, the US national debt has increased by $1.271 trillion. Collapse expert and historian Joseph Tainter has proposed that societies eventually collapse under the weight of their own accumulated complexity and bureaucracy. The government becomes so burdensome and large that it can no longer maintain a monopoly on violence as the oppressed begin to fight back. Societies are problem-solving collectives that grow in complexity in order to overcome new issues, and government violence is not needed to solve problems. However, the returns from complexity eventually reach a point of diminishing returns. This happens when the government creates so many problems with its solutions that the solutions become problems themselves. A great example of this is the Ponzi scheme known as Social Security. After this point, a collapse will eventually ensue, and the US is obviously on the cusp. More and more people awaken daily to the reality of what government has done to them, stealing their money, complete enslavement, indebting their unborn children, turning them into tax cattle, etc. The collapse of our civilization is overwhelmingly probable, as suggested by history. We now have the unique advantage of being able to learn from the wreckages of societies past. But instead of doing so and freeing mankind from government, many who are enslaved continue to push for shorter chains, more violence, control, domination, and theft by the ruling class, not just of themselves, but of all others too. Collapse is imminent, I'm afraid, as those in control will not willingly give up their stranglehold over the tax cattle slaves. If humanity could awaken to what the government really is, i.e. the master that owns them, and if it could remove the blinders which were put there by those who call themselves the government, we could all have a brighter future. the government has painted itself as some sort of religious fairy tale set out to save everyone and keep them safe. Once people realise the truth, they'll be able to claim ownership over themselves. Economic numbers all over the world continue to get worse, and most Americans still have absolutely no idea that this is happening. Most ordinary citizens are still under the impression that everything is going to be just fine, but the numbers suggest otherwise. The Baltic Dry Index just plummeted to the lowest level in 3 years, which is yet another indication that the global trade war is causing widespread economic pain. According to Bloomberg, global economic growth has now dropped to the lowest level since the Great Recession. The global economy's loss of momentum has left expansion now looking like its weakest since the global financial crisis, a development that's already sparked a dramatic shift among central banks. A UBS model suggests world growth slowed to a 2.1% annual pace at the end of 2018, which, it says, would be the weakest since 2008-2009. It appears that things are getting even worse during the first few months of 2019. In North America, Europe and Asia, signs of a major downturn are everywhere. China car sales dropped in January, and data last week showed US retail sales posted their worst drop in 9 years in December. In Europe, where the slowdown has been particularly marked, sentiment indicators continue to weaken, and the latest OECD leading indicator has also declined. The numbers coming out of China are particularly striking. Experts were stunned last week when it was announced that Chinese car sales had plunged 17.7%. Car sales in China continued to decline in January after their first full-year slump in more than 2 decades, adding to pressure on automakers who bet heavily on the market amid waning demand for cars from the US to Europe. Passenger vehicle wholesales fell 17.7% year-on-year, the biggest drop since the market began to contract in the middle of last year, while retail sales had their 8th consecutive monthly decline, industry groups reported a week ago. That's a disastrous number and a sign that this will be a very tough year for the global auto industry. Meanwhile, German industrial production is falling at a pace not seen since the last global recession. Unexpectedly, as they like to say, German industrial production fell 3.9% in December 2018 compared to December 2017, after having fallen by a revised 4.0% in November, according to German statistics agency des Staates. These 2 drops were steepest year-over-year drops since 2009. Even during the European debt crisis in 2011 and 2012, it hit Germany's industry hard as many European countries weaved in and out of a recession, with some countries sinking into a depression. German industrial production never fell as fast on a year-over-year basis as in November and December. But bad as things are in Germany, they are even worse in Italy. Italy's economy has already fallen into recession, and their debt problems continue to grow with each passing day. Watch Italy, because it's going to be a key to the drama currently unfolding in Europe. US retail sales just suffered their biggest drop in more than 9 years, and the stunning bankruptcy and liquidation of Payless Shoe Source has made front-page news all over the nation. Payless Shoe Source confirmed that it will close its 2,100 stores in the US and Puerto Rico and start liquidation sales shortly. The company is also shuttering its e-commerce operations. The closings mark the biggest by a single chain this year and nearly doubles the number of retail stores set to close in 2019. This means the beginning of the end for the global economic bubble. Even the most clueless pundits in the mainstream media can see what's coming. Most people are conducting their lives as if nothing was going to change. To most people, the system seems to be functioning normally, and there appears to be no cause for alarm. Unfortunately, things are not that simple. Rubber bands can keep stretching for quite a while, but if you put too much pressure on them, they will eventually snap. There is currently an enormous amount of pressure on the global economic bubble, and someday it will snap too.